Good day, neighbors. Jana Elementary School. Missouri School PTA says U.S. Army Corps of Engineers findings. That's just part of a headline of many. The Google is Jana School testing results, Jana. Now, why is this interesting? This is a story of our nuclear past. More leftovers from it, and what happens when things get out of hand. Let's be polite here. So, an independent lab was asked to come in and test a public school building for radiation. Now, this independent lab has its own testing processes and procedures and methods and instrumentation. These are $1 million worth of investment in just one lab. The other lab with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers very likely has different instruments, different methodologies, and different rules or constraints on how they can report. So the analysis of this can appear as though one was wrong and the other is right. That analysis is somebody's interpretation of this data. But if you understand the constraints, it's a debate about what level of radiation is acceptable, what level of pollution is acceptable. Even if the radiation risk is gone, which is another long conversation about decay activities and what these elements decay into, like lead. If the radiation risk is gone, there might be a large possibility of lead in the area. It's a very fine dust. Ingested over time, we all should have an idea that lead is not good. It was the ancient Greeks and Romans that learned lessons about lead drinking vessels and food vessels. It's a really easy material to work with, and they found out the hard way. Back in the days before computers and what we would call science today, they learned about lead in water. Lessons from history. Made more precise, we know how to measure for this stuff. So this debate is about harmful levels and where those lines are. And there's words like alera inside of the debates and the conversations. And rules and regulations put constraints on what people can say about these materials. I've noted before, a long time ago, talking about Geiger counters and those detectors. You can find a note that says 3 times background radiation level is considered a risk. What that means is you need something better than a Geiger counter to find out what that risk is. But the Geiger counter can identify there is a risk there when presented properly. There is so much to these measurement sciences, and even to the terms they can use. So in the report, the Boston lab that did their analysis noted that it was 2 times background radiation for alpha particles. There's many rules about how that measurement is taken in situ or in labs. They have to be followed. It's called a chain of custody and begins almost at the inception of I want to test. That's the first thing, is the piece of paper that says we want to test, right? And from there you add papers or computer files onto that. And you create records that go into databases somewhere. So that 2 times background quote from the one lab is interesting and matters, because under another set of rules or guidelines, that's not a risk. It's within allowable limits by regulation, so you can't call it a risk or scary. So that's where I think the differences are. It is in the analytics and the interpretation of the analytics, and that can cause great debates about what goes on. But many a headline is misleading unless you read a lot of them and go find some source papers and can make tails and heads of them. Thank you all. Peace is out.